how we organize them in our context and in the British Council in Spain. And then how we measure success, if it's possible to measure success, because that's another question. So first of all, can you tell me if you participated in a COP or something similar to a COP? So you might call it a teacher activity group, it might be a WhatsApp group, but some kind of professional community.
Can you see that poll, Anna?
I can see the poll, but do I, yeah,
Okay.
I don't vote, do I?
No, you don't vote.
No.
I mean, the answer's obvious, I guess.
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
Oh, that's fantastic. So half of you have taken part in a COP. Okay, that's interesting. So some of this will be interesting to see if what your experience has been similar to the experiences that we've been having in Spain. And for those of you that haven't, I think there's enough here for you to understand, you know, how they could be run and what are the kinds of things you need to consider. So Levin Wenger, that's the original proponents of communities of practice, which weren't necessarily for education, but they suit education very well. So they described the characteristics as being a domain of interest. So it has to be, you have to have a shared commitment to the domain. And in our case, the domain is obviously teaching or education. And the community is about building relationships. Some communities of practice can come up organically, but what we've done in our particular context is that we've organized them. And the relationships are built through the community of practice that we organize. But you may find that there is a community of practice that exists, and then they decide to meet and to talk about their shared domain of interest. And then shared practice. It's very important for for the participants in a COP to be practitioners. So it's not enough, you can't theorize about teaching. You have to be a teacher in the classroom teaching. And this means that the way that we've been running COPs is that all the participants are peers, which for us, or for me anyway, has been one of the fundamental issues in the success of COPs. So there's been one community of practice which has been run by a middle manager, but all the rest have been teachers, run by teachers for teachers. The learning is situated, so it's in the COP, you learn to talk about teaching through the community of practice, and then you're learning in context because you're teaching. And the learning belongs to the group. You're learning, you're teaching, you learn from your peers, and the group forms what's the learning, which is why in a sense it can be a little bit difficult to measure. So another poll, well, I think it's ticking. So bearing in mind, this is Wenger now works with trainer. Well, they've taken on each other's names, but this is another definition of what a community of practice is. And I'm going to give you 3 examples, and I'd like you to tell me if you think these fulfill the definition that Wenger trainer gives there of a community of practice. And if you'd like to add a comment, please do. I hope you're all thinking and ticking or clicking on boxes.
Yeah, I'm just giving it another
Okay.
for a few seconds.
Okay. Okay, that's yes, that's interesting. I think I agree. I agree with the teacher staff room can be considered a community of practice, but it's not particularly structured and people aren't there for that purpose, although that can come up as a conversation. It's a kind of organic community of practice, and I miss it because now with COVID, our staff room has disappeared, and I'm sure it has for a lot of you. So those conversations that you have in the staff room where you do learn, I'm missing. I think the chats at the photocopy machine, which we're still having, it's not really about learning, it's about sharing material sometimes. So I quite often go to the photocopier and I see what someone else is photocopying, and I have a look, and then you might ask for a copy, obviously you might use it in your class. A WhatsApp group definitely can be a community of practice. In fact, I noticed that Jessica Mackay is here, and she's a proponent of using WhatsApp groups for learning. And I know that in West Africa, I watched, I think it was a webinar through the British Council, where they support communities of practice through WhatsApp groups because teachers have access to mobile phones, but they don't necessarily have access to the technology that allows them to attend something online, or because of distances, they can't travel somewhere. So WhatsApp group, definitely. It's not something I've taken part in, but I think it can definitely form a community of practice. So the way that this is a very basic outline. I'll go into more detail about what we do here, but basically we have a facilitator. The facilitator proposes a topic. The community is formed around that topic. They meet 4 times a term because our terms are normally between 10 and 12 weeks long, so that's manageable. Teachers have to commit to attending all 4 meetings because that's how the community is formed. That can be a problem though sometimes. And the facilitator gives the teachers, they decide on a task which is set up at the end of the session for teachers to do in their classes. And normally there are 2 weeks between meetings. So we've looked at what a community of practice is, and now we're going to look at facilitators and facilitator training. So I'd like to hear what you think, if you think we need a facilitator and why we would need a facilitator in a community of practice. Or perhaps you might think that we don't need a facilitator. So I'd like to see what your opinions are. Yes. Yes. Yes, I think I'm agreeing with most of what you're saying. Yes, managing and relate and managing the discussions or structuring them, definitely. Yes, encouraging and motivation. Normally it's not a problem, but I can understand that it might be depending on how why people are doing the community of practice. Okay, rotating yes, that's an interesting idea actually, rotating the facilitator. I have done that in one community of practice that I did online. Yes, and to channel everything. Okay, yeah, on the whole, I think we agree. I'll just give you my suggestions. Because the way we run it, the facilitator is the one that proposes the topic. We ask the facilitator they have to kind of conceptualize the COP. So decide, I'm going to do a COP on dealing with students with special educational needs. So what are the key issues of that topic? And then think about how the 4 sessions, or what the 4 sessions are going to be about. And then that gives it a kind of a shape. The shape may change, but the facilitator has to have the initial concept. We emphasize the fact that the facilitator is not the expert. It's not top down. You're facilitating, you're a peer with the group, but you can be the guide. So the facilitator normally might know something about the topic, might have done some reading, but they're not the expert. And we'll talk about something related to that in a bit. They also create the space for the community to form. So that's important too. The attitude, the sort of feeling that they generate. Direct discussions, which is something that some of you have said. I don't know what your experience has been, but sometimes communities of practice, there's a danger of them becoming kind of therapy sessions. Teachers don't often have the chance to be with other teachers for a whole hour talking about teaching. So sometimes it can slip into sharing problems and finding answers from people which are not necessarily related to the topic. So the facilitator has to very gently make sure that people are on task. The facilitator can point to readings as well, or where people can find information on a topic, and they set up the task. So as I said earlier, it's good if the facilitator can think of a task for teachers to do, but perhaps during the meeting, something comes up and the group decides that they're going to do a slightly different task, or a completely different task, but the group has to agree on what that task is. And we've asked facilitators as well, once the COP is finished, once they've had their 4 meetings, to summarize what's been covered in the COP. We had one facilitator who used to do infographics, and they were great, and he would put them up, post them in the staff room. And I tried to do the same, and unfortunately never ever succeeded in making an infographic, but it was a really nice way of summarizing it. So who's suitable? Who makes a good facilitator? So my original idea was, we need people with a diploma, and they need to have 10 years of experience, and they need to have I had a certain profile in mind. And then what we've had, the people that we have had facilitating have been all sorts of different ages. So from 30 upwards, I won't say what the upwards is. They've had a range of qualifications, some CELTA, some Delta, some an MA, sometimes a combination of the two. We have one who's doing an MA at the moment. But the most important quality that they all need is a commitment to this type of CPD. You have to be committed to it for it to work, and in order to be able to run a community of practice. And it doesn't suit everybody. Some people prefer to go to an inset session. We run inset as well, and we run teacher-led CPD, and communities of practice are part of that. And depending on where you are in your career, you might not be interested in this, and you might just want to go to an inset, which is absolutely fine. It's a different type of learning, of course. So the training we provide, I wrote a 3-hour session, and this is what we basically look at. So we've discussed, I think, most of this. Confidentiality is very important, so that people are willing to share the problems or the challenges that they're having in their classroom. So the more people open up, the more likely they are to learn, and to learn from others. And it's also quite comforting if you go to a community of practice and discover that something that is perhaps a little bit of a no-no, like using L1, or it's not anymore, but and you suddenly find that everybody else is doing exactly the same. So you think, well, I can't be that bad then. And how, yes, and this idea of teaching, but being both teachers and learners. Now, notion of best practice. This is a quote that I use from a book called I've put it in the, it's called, sorry, I've got it here. Sorry. Better than best practice. I've put it in the references at the end. So it's to try and get away from this idea that there is a way to teach and there is a best way to teach. So evidence and research points in certain directions, and it's good to know what that says, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that is the best thing for your context and for your learners. So it's important for people to go along to a community of practice and to know that they're trying to find a solution for their learners and for their context. And it's not a question of saying, I have to teach vocabulary this way, and how am I going to do that with my learners? No, it has to be more flexible than that. So one of the things I think that communities of practice can do is widen your repertoire of methods. And it gives you a choice of what to use in particular contexts. And then challenging beliefs. This is a definition of a teaching belief. This is taken from the ELTJ, who have something I call key concepts in ELT, which is freely available. And it's a great place to start because they're very short, 2-page articles. It's a great place to start if you are interested in something, just to go and have a look and see what a sort of a good, clear definition is. So this is Michaela Borg, not Simon Borg, but Simon Borg has written, and I agree with him, that for CPD to be effective, it needs to challenge your beliefs. You may decide that your belief is a correct one. You may decide that actually your belief works, or you may find that your belief has been challenged and you want to change it, and that you have to change it because you realize that that perhaps it's no longer valid. Yes, because we change as teachers and our beliefs change throughout our career. I do an activity I've also put in the references written by, and it's taken from an article written by Helen Donoghue, which is a repertory grid construct, which is to uncover and to challenge teaching beliefs. And it's a very useful activity to do. But I think at the beginning of a COP, it's quite useful just to find out what teachers believe about the topic that you're going to be looking at in the COP. So, 2 things ticked off our agenda. So how do we choose topics? There are 2 ways of framing a COP. I think you can either do it through a topic or a classroom challenge. So how do I teach vocabulary, or how do I deal with students with special educational needs? That's one way of organizing it. Or exploring or examining or reflecting on your practice. So it might be just a group of teachers who want to get together and talk about teaching. Now, the topics that we've covered, as you can see, there's quite a wide range. So this is special educational needs. And most of these have run for 4 meetings each, and they have run in different parts of Spain. So I'd like to ask you if you think these would be relevant in your context.
just letting it run because
yes, okay, that's fine. I it's a little bit difficult just to
yeah
wait
sit
in
quietly,
silence, but okay, I know, I understand. Yes. I'm really interested. I'm waiting. I'm keen to see what people think.
Let's sing a song while we're waiting.
I don't know if the songs I know are very suitable, actually.
Okay, here we go. I'm gonna.
Okay. Okay. Oh, right. This is interesting. L1, L2 use. That was a COP I ran, and it was all sorts of things were uncovered there. It may be because you are in context where there's more than one. The students have more than one language, but here, of course, we teach monolingual classes. So motivation, I meant to say motivation is about student motivation, not teacher motivation. Okay, so special educational needs is not a problem where you are. Okay. An assessment, okay, oh, I would have thought assessment perhaps more, but it's good to know that most of them we share concerns. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. That's interesting. So now these are actually, afterwards I realized that these are 3 different communities of practice that I ran, so it's clearly an interest of mine. Exploring our practice was the very first COP I ran about 5 years ago, so it wasn't it was my first experience, and it was a little bit, I don't want to say haphazard, but it was the ideas were coming up and I was trying them out. Experience versus expertise, otherwise known as the Dinosaur Club, was for teachers who with over 20 years of experience. And we talked, I've given it as an example, so I'll tell you later on what we looked at. And teacher development over time is the book I use, because this is another way of running a COP. I've done this, which is I've taken a book and I've used that book to inform the sessions. So I've put that in the references at the end as well. And then last term, I ran a COP on classroom events, which was based on a book by David Tripp called Critical Incidents, where you look at instances of something that's happened in your classroom, either because it is critical in the sense that something happened and you didn't know how to deal with it, or it's something that you noticed. And you see, framing that event and asking different questions about it helped us to see, to uncover beliefs and to challenge them, and then to see whether or not those beliefs still held true for us. Okay. If you have participated in a COP or you think you might like to run one, could you write for me in the chat box the topic that you've taken, that your COP has been about, and then the frame if it's important. So for example, you know, vocabulary, but teaching large classes, which might be, some people I know teach 50 or 60 students. So just put it in the chat box for me and we'll have a look and see. Oh, intercultural communication. Okay. Oh yes, senior learners, Jessica. Yes, that's I've seen that in Barcelona. Actually, it's really interesting. Yeah. So doing action research as a group, I suppose, doing it together and giving each other support. Okay, that's interesting. Assessment is a very interesting topic for a COP, and in fact someone I know ran a COP on assessment and it lasted 2 years. Okay, new curriculum. Extensive reading, yes, that was something that was done also in Spain. I didn't include it in the topics, but they did look at that. I never know what the difference is between extended and extensive. Okay, young learners. Yes, depending on what your definition of young learners is. Okay, gender education, I'm not sure what that is. I don't know if that means teaching girls separately to boys or what. Okay, reading. Yes, vocabulary is something that we looked at, but we looked at it for higher level learners. Games, I'm not sure that games, I'm not sure, you would have to frame that slightly differently, I think, for it to work as a COP. Classroom management, definitely. Oh, trauma. Gosh, that's something I hadn't thought about at all. Mm. Yes, activity-based learning, gamification. Yes, these are all topics which are really interesting. I might take some ideas from you, actually. There's some really good ones. Yes, literature, we looked at remote teaching. Yes. the new what's the word, challenge for teachers, yeah, online teaching, yeah. We ran something, I'll look at it in a bit. We ran something in lockdown here. Well, I ran something in lockdown here, which was about that. Okay. Okay. Yes, flipped learn. Yes, flipping the classroom. Yes, that's an yes, that's something we can do now. Storytelling, critical thinking. Yeah. Mentoring. Yes, I'm going to form part of a group which is about mentoring. Yeah. Blended learning. It's incredible, isn't it? Everyone thinks that teaching job is so straightforward and simple, and look at all these different things that we need, all these different aspects to teaching that we could be looking at and sharing as a group. Okay. Oh, lateral thinking. I haven't thought about that for a while. Yes, when I talk about principled eclecticism, don't we? So that's problem solving for students, I suppose. Synonyms and antonyms would be part of vocabulary, wouldn't they? Yes, conflict resolution is something that the British Council does in certain parts of the world. Analysing the level of known is assessment, isn't it? That's part of assessment. So I think assessment is a huge topic. And online assessment is even more difficult than assessment. Well, I find it that way because my tendency is to transfer the real world to, well, the face-to-face world to technology. Learning how to learn, yes. We have someone at the moment running a COP on learner autonomy, which is exactly that, Nubar, learning to learn, helping students to experiential learning too. Assessment. Great, okay. Well, that's fantastic. Well, thank you. Well, face-to-face teaching is what I prefer, but these times now we're having to learn how to do things slightly differently. Well, thank you for all those suggestions. Okay, so I'm going to show you a couple of examples of COPs that we ran and how they were organised. So vocabulary for high-level learners. I ran this. Well, actually, I'm going to give you two examples of ones I ran because I know what was in the sessions. So thinking about vocabulary, and I looked at Paul Nation. This is the only book I looked at. So Paul Nation is kind of expert, and used he has a kind of a graph in the book which explains what knowing lexis is. What does it mean to understand lexis? So form meaning use, collocation, constraints, and we thought about where our C1, C2 students had a problem, yeah? Then we thought about recording vocabulary. And what we did here was that we photocopied examples of our students, because our students have folders or notebooks where they have a place for recording vocabulary. So we photocopied what our students were recording and we compared what those students were doing. And we knew which students were stronger than others. So we wondered if perhaps the strongest students were recording vocabulary and perhaps were stronger students because of the way they were recording it. And did we need to train the others to do it that way? it's quite interesting. I had a student once who would just write down words on the back of his folder, and he just wrote down the words he liked. And by the end of the year, he had about, I don't know, 80 words on it. That was his way of recording what he liked. And then we talked about recycling vocabulary. So we looked at an IH video given by Andrew Wakely on questioning techniques, and we tried them out in class. We also looked at a blog by Leo Sullivan, who's sort of his speciality is vocabulary. So that's what we did for that. And then the one I also ran, which is for the dinosaur corner or club or whatever you want to call it, experience versus expertise. So we looked at what our teaching beliefs were. In a sense, to revisit them, because sometimes if you've been teaching for a long time, they kind of go into the background, you sort of forget that you have them. We showed how we drew our career path by using a timeline, and then looked at different points on it where we'd made a decision which had taken us in one direction rather than another. And then we looked at Huberman's life stages. I first discovered Huberman through Tessa Woodward, and there's a talk on the British Council website where she talks about him, and he studied teachers, I'm not sure if it was Switzerland or France, and it's all the different stages that they go through. So we mapped ourselves, we had a look to see, there are 7 stages, and so we looked at whether or not we'd gone through them and where we were, and we talked about that. I encourage people to use diaries, but that's an example of a task that a lot of people don't have time to do. We also looked at critical incidents, and then we discussed what we thought was good practice from the perspective of our experience. There was a little bit of therapy there as well, because we were all older teachers. Now the tasks that the facilitators give need to be manageable, and we encourage them to give them at the end. So for example, the very first one I mentioned that I ran, I asked teachers there to voice record a class and then to listen to it and analyze it. Vast task, absolutely unmanageable, unreasonable. It was just too time consuming. So you have to think about something that people can do, because they're doing this, in our case, the task they're doing in their own time. And it has to be something that's related to what they're doing in the classroom. So these are some of the things that I've given. So questioning techniques, so specifically trying to use certain questioning techniques in the classroom and then noting down what happens. Dictation, not as a dictation, but for other things. You're in a context where there are no resources, you want to give the students a task, dictate the questions, rather if you can't photocopy them. Portable resources, so things that you can carry around with you and use, especially with primary learners, so things like a ball, a bell, people have different things. Prose translation, we did an activity where we asked students, we gave something to students in English, they translated it to Spanish, and it was passed on to another group who then translated it back into English, and people had a look at where the problems were. It was a really interesting exercise to do. And then, for example, peer assessment, trying something out where the students provide the criteria rather than the teacher. So these are all things that were manageable and could be done in class time. So these are some of the places where you can get information. The British Council has loads of stuff. It's all free. There are articles which are short, videos as well. The ITOEFL website has lots of recorded talks from ITOEFL conferences. IH used to record, I don't know that they still do, but it is available. They would record training sessions given at IH. The ELTJ, some of it is free, some of it is paid. Key Concepts is freely available. And then blogs. I mean, there are all sorts of different blogs out there. These are some of the ones that I follow. I mean, Scott Thornbury has stopped writing every week, but his blog is still available, and that has everything. And then is there any other resources that you'd like to add in the chat for people to, that people might want to use? Please do add them, and then we can share them. Okay, so moving on. So we've covered all of that. So face-to-face versus online and practical issues. We had our COPs running in the teaching centres face-to-face, and we went online because of COVID. We have just transferred the face-to-face model to an online model. And I know that there are people who use online COPs and do something much more interesting, no doubt, than we're doing, because that's all we're sort of replicating the face-to-face model. The advantage to online is that because we have teaching centres in five different cities in Spain, it means that now when we run a community of practice, people can join us from all those different teaching centres. So it's been good because we've met people from different teaching centres that we didn't know before. The number of participants can go up because when we were doing them in the teaching centre, it was somewhere between 4 and 12, and online, it's between 10 and 24, 25. I'm not sure what the ideal number is. I find 24 in a COP just too many people to manage, but I think it just depends. And obviously in your context, you might have 40 or 50. The platforms that we use are Zoom, which is Zoom is useful because you can put people into breakout rooms, so it replicates group work. Where would English language teaching be if we couldn't put people in pairs or in groups? Anyway, but the Zoom allows you to do that. I miss not being able to listen to everybody at the same time, but that's just online, the online world. And then we also use Teams, which we have through the British Council Teams site. So you can use Teams to post articles or comments, or we've used video things as well. There are pros and cons to everything. Being online offers it to a wider public, and it means that people from all over, from all sorts of different places can meet up. Now, when it comes to actually running a COP, timetabling for us is an issue because we have a lot of teachers with lots of different timetables, so you have to find a time that suits everyone. The choice of topic, you have to choose a topic that is interesting to teachers and that can run over a series of meetings and is something that allows for people to try something out in their classroom. So not all topics are suitable, but that kind of knowledge comes with practice. We ask participants to commit for all the meetings. Participants don't always complete tasks, and that can be a problem because we set up a task and at the beginning of the following meeting, we discuss how it went. And if people haven't completed the task, then the beginning of the following session falls, doesn't work quite the same. Number of participants, as I mentioned, how many? And outcomes. What did you learn? Well, I'm not sure. How can I measure it? It's a little bit difficult. So the way we run them in the British Council is we ask people to apply to be facilitators, we select them, and then, as I said, I give a 3-hour training session. The facilitator proposes the topic and we discuss how suitable the topic is and we give help. We have a teaching excellence manager called Annie McMullen who advertises and does all the hard work. And then the facilitator receives support if they need it, either from me or from Andy. Now, our context is that we have around 300 teachers in Spain, and we have 11 different teaching centres. So that is, that's just something that we have to deal with. Teachers need to fulfil normally either 10 or 20 hours of CPD, depending on their contract, and communities of practice are part of those CPD hours. So it's recorded and it counts towards it. And they have to do it outside of their teaching hours. Management support for this has been absolutely essential. It couldn't have happened without it. So the director of English teaching in Spain, Stephen Morel, was the one who committed the British Council in Spain to teacher-led CPD. And so it's thanks to him that it all started up. And Andy McMullen, who's the Teaching Excellence Manager, is also very committed to it. So he works very hard and makes a big contribution to what happens. So, last but not least, measuring success. So possible criteria, Simon Borg wrote a document for the British Council where he sets out what he thinks successful continuous professional development is. And I think COPs fulfill these requirements. They're relevant, you know, I'm not going to read it to you, but I think they do. And then Catherine Walters and Briggs, and now something they've written as well for Oxford University, they add, there's more there than there is in Borg's list. So, you know, this idea that it's concrete and classroom based, the communities of practice are run because of issues that arise for teachers. And sometimes an inset session is not enough. Just being told what to do is, or about someone giving you suggestions is not enough. You need to do a bit more. Collaboration obviously is at the heart of it. And then sustained, we sustain it over term, and it possibly isn't enough, but that's the way we're running them at the moment. I think I mentioned that someone had run one for over 2 years on assessment. And it would be fantastic to be able to do that. I think that would be really interesting. These are the kinds of comments that we've had in feedback from teachers. There recently was a webinar where Amy Lightfoot and Simon Borg and somebody else from British Council India spoke about teacher activity groups. And what the teachers here are saying reflects what they were talking about in that webinar. Confidence is really important. That's something I've seen. Teachers who perhaps are quieter in the staff room, or that perhaps you don't see around much and are a little bit shy. And I've seen them grow in confidence through a community of practice because they're sharing practice and they can see that other people think that what they're offering is a good idea and is interesting and works. So people gain confidence as teachers. They can do through a community of practice. So finally, I want to share an opinion. And the person that got me interested in communities of practice is a friend, Helen Donoghue. She's a senior lecturer at Sheffield Hallam University. And it's thanks to her that I'm doing them. And she's given me lots of support throughout the years. And she, in correspondence to me, this is what she thinks, why she thinks that COPs are valuable, and she summarized it so well that I'm just going to share I'm going to share what she says. This is why it's so difficult to say why the COP has worked, because it's the discussion that's important, not just the solution. And how do you validate a discussion? I suppose by asking the people who've taken part in it if they found it useful or not. And they are a process of critical inquiry, you know, no doubt about it. If depending on the COP, but they can definitely be, and that's very, very useful. So we've covered all the topics that were in our agenda. These are the references. So these are all the books I mentioned. This is Helen Donoghue's article on which is to uncover teaching beliefs. I'll go back to that page. I suppose you may want to take a photograph or a screenshot. And I want to thank you all. I'm absolutely delighted that so many people have come. I'm going to have a look at the question and answers, Paul. Oh, sorry, not question and answers. The questions.
You want the answers as well?
I think I'm supposed to be giving the answers.
Well, you know,
Yeah.
yes, yeah, you are.
Okay.
But that's okay, or at least, you know, yeah, an idea. Actually, although having said that, the first one might be a combination of both. There's a question from Annie Altimirano. Hi, Annie, saying, can anyone apply to be a facilitator for the British Council? And if yes, how, and do you hire non-native facilitators.
Well, the thing is that it's part of being people who facilitate. It's is actually part of their contract at the British Council. There's a rather complicated system of hours that people have to fulfil. So I'm afraid only at the moment only British Council employees or teachers can run COPs. But it's a good idea actually. I'm all in favour of having people from outside coming in, but at the moment no. And the British Council employs teachers of all sorts of nationalities and with different first languages, so that's not an issue at all.
I think you're talking about within the British Council with British Council staff, and I imagine it's the same in most countries. But I mean, yes, certainly within communities of practice that are established by the British Council as part of the programs or projects that run in different countries, I don't think it's necessarily. In fact, I think it's largely sort of people who are not working at the British Council who come. So I mean, it's different kind of departments, different projects, different things. But you're right, Anna. Yeah, I think certainly.
Yes, in Spain, it's taken as people, but as parts of people hours, it's not paid. It's not an extra payment or anything.
Yeah. So hopefully that answers your question, Annie. Also a good one for you, Anna, from Sudhakar. Is a community practice the same as a teacher activity group?
Well, my understanding, I've never taken part in a teacher activity group. My understanding from what I've read is that in a teacher activity group, the facilitator, whatever it's called, is considered the expert. So they are the ones who set tasks, decide what the sessions are going to be. And in fact, they're not always a peer, they're not always a teacher. There may be a teacher trainer who work full-time as a teacher trainer, or they may be in middle management. So they're set up slightly differently. The role of the facilitator is what's different. From what I've read, I'm not sure, but I've read about them in the Middle East, so in Egypt and perhaps in Jordan they've run them too, and they've been running them in India. So I think they have there's a slightly different concept, although it's the same. It's teachers getting together and talking to one another. So
yeah, I guess I'm not sure actually of the distinction, but yeah, so that's interesting that there's sort of the role of the facilitator.
It's the role of I think that's where the difference lies, because for us a facilitator is definitely not the expert. They're not the one. I mean, they may know about the topic, but it's not a top-down idea. It's a sharing with a group idea. So I think that's what's different.
It's interesting, isn't it? I guess it's sort of okay, this is an interesting one from Ravinaya. Oh gosh, no, sorry. I'll start again. Ravinarayan. Apologies. Motivating teachers to join communities of practice is obviously a challenge, and I know I've had that experience as well, and I'm sure you have. Well, the thing is that we have the luxury of being able to offer a program with inserts, with communities of practice and other teacher-led teacher development. So there is a choice. The best way to motivate teachers to join a COP is to have as the topic of a COP something that immediately addresses classroom problems. That's the best way of doing it. But COPs suit a certain type of teacher more, or it depends how much time you have, because an insert session, you just go and it's 1 hour, whereas a COP, we're asking people to commit over 8 weeks. They'll have to do something in their classroom and it's a bigger commitment. So it just depends on the teacher. But if you're addressing a teacher need, that's the best way to motivate teachers to attend. Can I just ask actually, and it's not mandatory, is it, the communities of practice that you've got?
No.
So people.
No, it's elective. The only thing is that people have to fulfill a certain number of hours of CPD, and communities of practice can be
considered.
Yes, so on our staff, we probably have about 30 or 40% of staff have taken part in communities of practice, and over half haven't.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
I think as well, sort of related to that, what's interesting in my experience sometimes is that you find that people will attend a training session, complain about it afterwards because it wasn't relevant to them. And then you offer them a choice of something which is more relevant to them, and they won't do that, or they don't want to do that. I don't know, I find that, you sort of have to question whether you're in the right career, perhaps, in those situations.
Yeah.
I don't know.
The thing about inset is it has to be well described, because otherwise people have the wrong expectations. They go along to the inset session, they think it's going to be a one thing, and in fact it's about another. So that can happen as well.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
But communities of practice suit a certain type of student,
teacher.
Oh, here's another question.
Okay, so what can the role, this is from Azra Yasmin.
Yeah.
What can the role of the facilitator in the environment where students from different communities interact?
Well, it would depend. I'm not sure I understand by different communities, because it's important for teachers to share a context in order to be able to help one another. So I don't know. I'm not sure if, for example, in Spain, I don't know that there would be much point in running a community of practice with teachers in, I don't know, in Sri Lanka, where the context is completely different and the problems are different. Because I'm not sure how much we would be able to help one another. So if that's what's meant, then I'm not sure if that would work or not. There must be things that people would have in common, but their teaching context would be so different that it might not be particularly valuable.
Yes, I mean, if you're sort of looking at a theme, a sort of a broad theme, motivation, for example, is obviously, is different in a classroom where you've got maybe, 15 students or 20 students, and technology to motivation in a rural situation where you've maybe got 50 in the class. So
exactly.
the broad theme is, you're likely to kind of learn from each other in that way, or at least raise awareness of motivation in a different context to your own, which can, I guess, be it's certainly helpful in some ways.
Yeah, no, exactly, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, interesting. Okay, any more questions in the Q&A? I can see a few things in the chat. Motivating teachers participating effectively in online discussions. I guess, I mean, I suppose it's sort of related to the previous question about motivation and teachers. Did you find that when you moved online that became more problematic?
No, the thing is that because we use the Zoom platform, and I put people into groups of 3 or 4, so everybody has a chance to speak. I suppose if you had a very large group, I'm not sure how that would work. The problem with large groups is that if you're the person giving the session, then it's difficult to have a chance to pop into each breakout room to talk to people. Teachers love talking about their classroom and what's going on in their classroom. If you ask them a question that's related to their teaching practice, normally it's quite difficult to get them to stop talking, in my experience. But maybe we're all big talkers here, I don't know. But on the whole, because teachers don't get much of a chance to talk about what they're doing in the classroom with other teachers, there aren't many opportunities for that. And now with COVID, there are even fewer because we don't have the staff room. So on the whole, it's a question of keeping people on track, and that's just a question, a little bit of diplomacy.
Okay. Sounds a bit like therapy, almost. It's counselling.
Sometimes. No, it's definitely therapy sometimes, definitely. And why not?
Well, exactly. Yeah, give them a chance to talk about it. It's great.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's pretty much all the questions that we've got in the chat. If you do think of any more questions, and after this webinar finishes and you'd like to ask them, Anna has very kindly agreed to take part in a Facebook Live event Q&A next Tuesday, and that's going to be at 2 p.m. UK time, if I remember correctly. Anna, you can tell me if I'm wrong.
Yes, that's right. Yes, it's 3 p.m. for me, after lunch.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, after lunch. So 2 p.m. UK time next Tuesday. If you visit the Teaching English Facebook page, then you can watch that. There's no registration necessary for it. You just need to turn up, and if you've got a question, then you can ask Anna, and hopefully we'll get through as many of those questions as possible. So that's pretty much all we've got time for. I'd just like to say thank you as well to Anna, along with everyone else in the chat who's also saying a big thank you. So thanks a lot for that, Anna.
Well, thank you. No, I'm really pleased to see how many people have come, and please get in touch. That's my email, and if you're on Twitter, that's my Twitter handle, as it's called. Yes, please get in touch. I'm more than happy to correspond on this. Yeah.
Great.
So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just very quick, I'm just putting things in the chat. There are links to the recording, to the feedback survey, to the certificate. If you're on a mobile device, it's likely that you won't be able to click on those and open them up, but don't panic if you were going to panic. There'll be an email that you will receive tomorrow, which will have all of those links in. So yeah, you can access the recording, the feedback survey and the certificate and everything when you get that email. I think the survey should automatically open up when we end the webinar. So please do give us your feedback. It's always useful to get that and helps us plan for future webinars. So that's all pretty much, I think. Thank you again, Anna. Thanks everyone.
No, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for coming. And we'll
all right,
see
bye.
you again soon. Okay, bye everyone.
Bye.